What if I told you that right now, at this very moment, thousands of new churches are being planted across America and around the world? Not because old churches are closing, not because communities are crying out for them, but because church planting has become an industry, a movement, a culture with its own rules, metrics, and massive financial backing. Please don't consider this an attack on Christianity or churches. This is an honest examination of a movement that's become so pervasive, so normalized, that we rarely stop to ask the critical questions. By the end of this video, you'll understand why church planting isn't inherently wrong. The early church did it. Missionaries do it. There are contexts where new churches are genuinely needed, and some planters are doing beautiful, faithful work with pure motives and healthy practices. Let's start at the beginning. Church planting isn't new. The concept is actually deeply biblical. If you open the New Testament, you'll find the Apostle Paul doing exactly this, traveling from city to city, establishing communities of believers, appointing leaders, and moving on to the next location. In the book of Acts, we see the early church spreading organically through persecution, migration, and intentional missionary work. Paul's letters to churches in Rome, Corinth, Ephesus, and other cities are evidence of this first-century church planting movement. It was grassroots, spirit-led, and emerged from genuine need and calling. For centuries, church planting happened this way. Missionaries went to unreached areas. Immigrants established churches in their new communities. Growing congregations would plant daughter churches when they outgrew their spaces or wanted to reach new neighborhoods. But something changed in the late 20th century. Church planting transformed from an organic, need-based practice into a strategic, growth-focused movement. Several factors converged to create this shift. In the 1970s and 80s, the church growth movement pioneered and popularized, introduced business principles into church strategy. Churches began studying demographics, marketing, and numerical growth metrics. Success became quantifiable. As megachurches exploded in size during the 1980s and 90s, they became proof of concept. Many leaders showed that with the right strategy, churches could grow to thousands or tens of thousands of attendees. These success stories became templates. In the early 2000s, many network companies created infrastructure specifically designed to recruit, train, fund, and deploy church planters. What was once informal became systematized. The comparison to startups was explicit. Just as Silicon Valley celebrated founders launching the next big app, church planting culture celebrated young pastors launching the next big church. There were pitch sessions to networks, funding rounds from donors, and 5-year growth projections. Different denominations approached this differently. Some maintained traditional church planting with careful oversight, theological training, and long-term support. Others embraced the new model enthusiastically. But across denominations, a common thread emerged. Church planting became a mark of a dynamic, growing, forward-thinking church or denomination. To not be planting was to be stagnant, dying, or faithless. Let's talk about how someone becomes a church planter in modern church culture. It's a well-oiled recruitment machine. At these conferences, successful church planters share their stories. The narrative arc is almost always the same: sensing a call, taking a risk, facing challenges, experiencing breakthrough, seeing lives changed, and now multiplying into even more churches. It's compelling, it's inspiring, and it's designed to make you think, I could do that, I should do that. What exactly is being sold? Let's break down the core promises. Church planners are told that starting a new church is the most effective way to reach people for Christ. Church planting is the most effective form of evangelism. Whether these claims hold up to scrutiny is debatable, but they're repeated constantly. Planters are promised that they won't just pastor a church, they'll start a movement. The pitch includes personal development. You'll grow as a leader. You'll learn skills that most pastors never acquire. Networks offer community, support, and brand association. Here's something that surprises many people. Church planting can come with significant financial backing. Networks and denominations have raised hundreds of millions of dollars for church planting. A typical church planting package might include, for someone in their late 20s or early 30s, maybe with seminary debt and a young family, this financial support can be incredibly attractive. You're being paid to pursue what's framed as a divine calling. The economics make it feasible in a way it wouldn't be otherwise. Assessment has become its own industry within the church planting world. This includes psychological testing, interviews, spousal interviews, theological examinations, and strategic planning reviews. But it also deepens commitment. Once you've invested time and emotional energy into assessment, you're more likely to follow through. Interestingly, these assessments heavily favor certain personality types: extroverted, visionary, entrepreneurial, resilient. Whether these are the traits that make someone a good pastor or spiritual leader is a different question. Approximately 50–80% of church plants fail within the first 5 years. Of those that survive 5 years, many remain small and struggle financially. Only a small percentage achieve the growth and sustainability that was envisioned. Some networks claim better success rates, typically in the 60–70% survival range. But even these optimistic numbers mean that 30–40% of plants close. And survival doesn't necessarily mean thriving. It might mean a small, struggling congregation barely making it. Church plant failure isn't like a business closing its doors. It's more painful, more personal, more spiritually confusing. Sometimes it's dramatic. Moral failure by the planter, financial collapse, conflict that splits the core team, or simply running out of money and having to shut down. For the people involved, this is devastating. Launch team members who invested years of their lives feel betrayed and disillusioned. Families who uprooted their lives to join the plant face starting over. New believers who came to faith in the plant wonder what happened to the community that led them to Christ. Why do they fail? Not everyone who plants a church should plant a church. Some are running from established church ministry. Some are attracted to the idea more than the reality. Some have been swept up in the excitement without a deep, tested calling. Some areas don't need another church. The demographic research looked promising, but the reality is different, or the timing is off. Maybe the community is in transition, or economic factors make sustainability impossible. The models promoted at conferences and in training assume optimal conditions, but reality is messy. The core team doesn't gel. Key volunteers leave. The launch doesn't generate momentum. And when reality doesn't match expectations, disillusionment sets in. They feel they've failed God, their family, and their community. Some struggle with their faith. Children of failed church planters sometimes walk away from faith entirely, associating Christianity with the pain they witnessed in their home. These are the true believers who sacrificed for the vision. When the plant fails, they feel used. Some leave the church entirely. They may wonder if their faith was real, if God was ever in it, where they belong now. Failed church plants leave a bad taste in communities. They contribute to perceptions that churches are just after money or that Christians are flaky and unreliable. How do church planting networks respond to failure? And here's a troubling pattern. Some networks continue aggressive recruiting and planting despite high failure rates. Why? Because even if many plants fail, some succeed spectacularly, and those successes justify the whole enterprise in the eyes of the network leadership. In many cities, especially in the American South and suburban areas, there's a church on every corner. And yet, church plants continue launching in these already saturated markets. This creates competition for the same pool of Christians. Plants often succeed not by reaching the unchurched, but by attracting Christians from existing churches. This is called transfer growth, and it's incredibly common. The result is a musical chair situation. People move from church to church, attracted by better preaching, cooler worship, more programs, or a younger demographic. Meanwhile, established churches weaken, sometimes even closing, as their members migrate to newer, flashier plants. This doesn't expand the kingdom, it just rearranges it, and it can damage communities by creating instability and fragmentation. This makes deep community formation difficult. It undermines accountability and discipleship. It creates shallow, entertainment-oriented faith. And it puts pressure on church leaders to constantly innovate, improve, and compete. The focus shifts from faithfulness to attractiveness, from formation to production value. The irony is thick. Plants claiming to reach the city actually serve as outposts for gentrifiers, making cities less accessible to the very communities that have always been there. Why? Because they don't fit the model. Rural areas offer less potential for rapid growth. Poor communities can't financially sustain a plant. Truly unreached demographics require cross-cultural skills and long-term investment that the church planting machine isn't designed for. So, resources flow to places where success is most likely, not where need is greatest. This reveals that the driving force isn't really mission, it's measurable outcomes. When growth becomes the primary metric, theological truth can be compromised for pragmatic effectiveness. Churches avoid difficult teachings that might hinder growth. This creates questions about stewardship. Is this the best use of kingdom resources? Could this money serve the poor, support international missions, or strengthen existing churches more effectively? On the positive side, some plants genuinely serve their communities. They meet real needs, foster authentic relationships, contribute to neighborhood flourishing, and provide spiritual homes for people disconnected from traditional churches. The planter may be accountable only to a board they select, a distant coach they talk to monthly, or network leadership that's primarily concerned with numbers. This accountability gap creates conditions for abuse. Financial misconduct, spiritual manipulation, sexual impropriety, and authoritarianism can flourish in environments with insufficient oversight. And when problems emerge, there's often no clear process for addressing them. People hurt by failed plants or abusive planters have limited recourse. Ironically, aggressive church planting may be contributing to faith deconstruction and departure from Christianity. When people experience multiple church failures, when they see the machinery behind the spiritual rhetoric, when promises don't match reality, disillusionment sets in. So where does this leave us? The problem isn't church planting itself. The problem is church planting culture, the systematization, commercialization, and industrialization of something that should be organic, spirit-led, and need-based. Is there genuine need for a new church in this location, or am I just repackaging what already exists? Are we measuring success by biblical standards or business metrics? This isn't about shutting down all church planting. It's about doing it better, more thoughtfully, more biblically, and with greater honesty about the costs and challenges. Because at the end of the day, the church isn't a startup, it isn't a brand, it isn't a growth strategy. It's the body of Christ, called to faithfully embody the gospel in every generation and every place. And that's a vision worth pursuing, but only if we pursue it with wisdom, humility, and a commitment to truth over hype. Thanks for watching. If this video challenged you or made you think differently about church planting, let me know in the comments. Once again, it's not the attack, it's the question of accountability and faith after the failure.